So welcome, 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 our brilliant, beloved colleague, Christine. We so appreciate your consistent leadership and consistent solidarity and commitment to community economic development. And as always at Setsi, we begin all things by giving thanks to our creator, by giving thanks to the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We acknowledge all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So Christine, can you please introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers and share a bit about your remarkable work?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I am really honored to be on this platform. My name is Christine Sentongo-Andersen, and I'm speaking to you today from the unceded territory of the Algonquin and the Anishinaabe in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. I came to Canada in 1996 for university. I attended McGill University where I did biochemistry, and then I did a graduate diploma in healthcare management. I lived in Montreal for 7 years. I then moved to Halifax for 5 years with my now husband. And then we've been in Ottawa since August of 2008. Our daughter was born in Halifax and we moved here with her. So I've been working in the Senate of Canada for 15 years now, and I'm on my fourth senator.
That's absolutely incredible. I love the way you're able to, one, give such context and background on your movements across the country, but more importantly, the fact that you've worked in government for 15 years and been on your fourth senator. That truly speaks to, one, your tenacity, your resilience, and your clear leadership. So once again, I appreciate all that you do for so many. My next question, what's inspiring you right now? What has you curious, or what's keeping you up at night?
Okay, well, I think that is a multifold answer that I have. Like I said, I've been in the Senate for 15 years. I'm on my fourth senator. I am currently working for Senator Dawn Anderson. She is the first Inuit female to be appointed to the Senate of Canada. Props to Senator Anderson. And she is also the only senator for the Northwest Territories. Canada only has one senator for each territory. I think for me, what is really fulfilling in the work I do is I get to go up north quite a bit. I seem to connect with the communities up north a lot more than I do in the south. I think it's because culturally, they're closer to my culture, originally being born and from Uganda. There is a synergy there that I can't really explain. If it wasn't so cold, I'd probably move up north to work. If you don't know, there are a lot of issues in the north that have not been dealt with by Canada as a nation. And so working for her has really opened my eyes in terms of the gaps and also in terms of the, you know, the neglect really that certain parts of this country have to deal with. The other work that I've been doing is with the Pan-African Heritage Museum. My father approached me in 2020, myself and my then Senator, Patricia Bovey, and asked us if we would be on board for the Canadian contribution to this amazing museum that is being built in Accra, in Ghana right now, as we speak. It has been a very long journey, lots of meetings. I was able to get funding from both Canada Council for the Arts and Global Affairs. I will forever be grateful for their funding. I was able to secure 6 Black curators from across Canada, and we currently have 5 of the 6 videos up on the website. I am still working on the Prairies contribution, but that will be coming as well. And I'm very inspired by working with Black people, both in the Senate and in my personal life, but also telling their stories, a lot of stories that I never actually knew in terms of the rich history that Canada has with its African diaspora.
Indeed, indeed. And the museum is remarkable work. I was happy when you asked me to join the board a few years ago, and it's
Thank you.
been a pleasure to see the development, the progress, and once again, the sheer grit to make it manifest. So once again, I just applaud your visionary leadership and your consistent tenacity. So my next question, what challenges and barriers do you face in your work, and what are some of the approaches you're taking to overcome some of these challenges and barriers?
Okay. I would say that one of the things that, in terms of my current work with the Northwest Territories, is my position is Director of Parliamentary Affairs. So I am looking at everything legislation wise. I'm also looking at policies. I'm looking at special studies that are in the Senate and in the House of Commons. And it's become very clear to me that, and this is unintentional, but unintentional situations can also lead to harm. A lot of the legislation that we have is very much Southern based. So you won't really see the reflection of the territories in some of the legislation because they don't take into account the unique way of living that is in the North. So it is a challenge a lot of times to not only pick out those pieces of legislation that are clearly neglecting the territories, but also to make other people aware of them and make them care. I find it's very hard. And it's not, again, this is not throwing shade to anyone. I think we all work within our comfort levels. And, when people are trying to do good through legislation, sometimes it's more important for them, for that legislation to come to fruition than to actually assess where it might be lacking for all the populations within Canada. So that's been quite a struggle. Now, when it comes to this museum project, because it's like having two full-time jobs, except one is not paid, it was a big struggle for me to figure out how exactly this online iteration of the museum was going to come to fruition. I was lucky enough to have not only a discussion team made up of 18 Black artists and creators across Canada, but I also had a smaller content steering committee that really, really helped me. And one of the people, the chair of the committee, that I will forever be grateful to her, is the amazing, amazing Chantal Gibson, who is based out of Vancouver. She is an amazing woman and educator and poet. And in fact, she was one of the two artists that we featured in the first iteration of honoring Canada's Black artists in the Senate of Canada. And this was an initiative that my then Senator, Patricia Bovey, had put together. So yeah, very, very proud of that. But it was a lot of work trying to figure it out. I don't have the background in arts and culture, so I was lucky to have Senator Bovey who did. But because of her role as a senator, she couldn't get involved because of, ethics and conflict of interest. So there was a lot of work I had to do and figure out on my own. That was challenging, but rewarding at the end of the day.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Right now, Setsi is working on a project around arts and culture and the intersection between that and social finance. And looking at how social finance, festivals, and different cultural pieces can actually be resourced better, but more importantly, create sustainability, and more importantly, redefine what sustainable finance and social finance looks like at the intersection of arts and culture. So my next question is, how do you feel about the future of arts and culture in Canada? Are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic? Are you hopeful?
I'm hopeful because I know. Let me preface this a bit, and I'll speak to my former senator, Patricia Bovey. She is the first art historian, museologist, museum curator, director that has ever been appointed to the Senate of Canada since 1867. So she had a huge task in terms of speaking to the voice of arts and culture. And I learned a lot from her because of her wealth of 50 plus years of working in this sphere. And I think it was during COVID that it became very clear to me that the arts and culture sector is not only extremely neglected nowadays, but is almost forgotten. It is, I believe, the third largest contributor to Canadian economy, and yet they're the largest demographic of living poor in Canada at the same time. So something isn't adding up. And when CERB was rolled out during the pandemic to assist people because everyone was now stuck at home, Senator Bovey and myself and my colleague worked very, very hard, hours and hours and hours, to figure out how CERB could be adjusted to fit artists because they wouldn't have qualified for anything because they work in a gig economy. They don't have a 9 to 5. They don't have the same sort of way to make money. So it became very clear that this is a demographic that is not only forgotten, but also neglected. We see it with the funding that has decreased over the decades. If you go and look back at funding for arts and culture, you can also look at it when the Prime Minister announced that there was going to be some shift in economic sustainability and funding to the Black community. That was a huge announcement, but all of that funding was for Black businesses. It did not feature anything to do with arts and culture. And there are a lot of Black businesses that are based in arts and culture. And we all know that art and culture are what fuel the soul. This is how people can tell their stories. This is how people connect. And without being able to do that, we're missing a piece in this whole sort of, I would say, holistic approach that we're trying to venture into when it comes to upholding Black people and increasing the finances. So we have a long way to go. You'll also note that these things change with every government. It will never be the same when it comes to funding. If you look at the education system as well, you will note that arts programs have been cut way more than any other programs because they're always the first to go. They're not going to cut the sports. They're not going to cut anything else on the educational platform, but arts and culture are always the first to go. And for some reason, we don't see the benefits to our soul. If it wasn't for art and culture, none of us would have survived the pandemic. If you have a subscription to Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, blah, 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 you were consuming arts and culture.
That is a fact. I couldn't agree more. And such a great way to, once again, conceptualize the need for arts and culture as an essential service and the fact that artists should not be starving artists. Artists should be honored and revered because they're cultural custodians and they hold institutional knowledge of cultural imperatives. So once again, I couldn't agree more, and I applaud your leadership. So my second last question, what is your ultimate goal and what does success look like and feel like to you and your colleagues?
Okay. Because working in a senator's office is, there at any given time, 105 senators in Canada. I believe we have 97 right now. Don't quote me on that, but I think we're up to maybe 97. Every office operates independently. In my office right now, it's just myself and another colleague of mine, and we also have a law student who's doing some remarkable work for us. But it's just a small group of us. So how we work is we need to determine what it is that the senator needs in order for her to fulfill her job. And again, having just one senator from the Northwest Territories, it's a small population, but it has a lot of issues. So I think one of the things that my colleagues and I do very well together is we work well in a team. I never have pride of authorship when it comes to anything. I believe that making something better is a good thing. I'm not arrogant enough to think that I know everything or I can do everything, because then I'm just shooting myself in the foot. I love to have the collaborative sort of efforts when working. Now, when it comes to my museum project, unfortunately, there's not so much I can do in terms of reaching out to my colleagues, people like yourself who are not on the ground. There's things that you're just not able to do. So it has been a little bit more of an independent working space. But that is something that I welcome. I welcome a challenge. I believe that it can be done. I'm never one of those people. I wish I worked in customer service. Whenever someone called me up, I'd be like, let me see what I can do. Instead of, no, we can't do that. And then 10 minutes later, you can. So I'm a very firm believer that anything can be done. You just need to want to do it.
Where there's a will, there's a way. I couldn't agree more.
Yes.
So my last question, do you have any closing thoughts or calls to action for our listeners and our viewers?
Well, one thing I will say is when it comes to Black Canadians, the African diaspora in Canada, I need people to sort of change their mindset. It's not a monolith. I've said that 1,000 times already. I want people to be able to engage with Black communities in a different way than they are engaging with it now. Black History Month has just passed, and we'll see the same faces over and over again. And that leads people to believe that there are only a handful of Black Canadians doing a handful of things in Canada. But CBC has an amazing 8-part docuseries on Black life in Canada, and I would urge everyone to go and watch that. If you don't have TV cable anymore like I do, download CBC Gem. It's free. I know I'm not here to promote CBC, but those series of docu-series were amazing. They're much longer than the videos that I produced. I would also urge people to go and watch the Pan-African Heritage Museum YouTube videos that the wonderful curators produced. They're between 8 to 15 minutes each, and they tell a very different story. Again, something that I, wouldn't have ever thought about. I would also urge people to actually look into what the Senate of Canada does, because before I came onto Parliament Hill, I had no clue. I wasn't educated high school wise in Canada, so that could be my excuse. But a lot of people that I know who were born and raised here still have no idea what the Senate does or what the Senate can do. The Senate is there to represent minorities and regions, and they do a lot of studies. It's a very different house. It's a complementary house, but that's why the phrase sober second thought comes up. Senators work very hard. They work long hours. They work on the weekends. They work on, they don't stop being a senator. And I just urge people to sort of rethink that aspect, because whatever I see in the media is always a negative story. It's always something controversial. It's always some sort of, a soundbite or, sometimes a little bombastic even. But we really need to figure out what it is that we want to put out there. And for people to do a little bit more research than just reading whatever they find on Twitter or whatever other platform people use.
I couldn't agree more. There are so many senators like Senator Bovey, Senator Francis Lankin, who I've known for years, Senator Ratna Omnivar, Senator Colin Deacon, Senator Tony Lafreda, Senator Rosa Galvez, and the work she's doing around the Climate Aligned Finance Act. So once again, I agree with you. Folks need to lean in around the work. And once again, I just applaud your leadership, your authenticity, your tenacity, and your sheer brilliance, my sister. I so appreciate all that you do for so many. I'm grateful to call you my sister, and I'm grateful to do work alongside you.
I am just grateful that you came into my life. As soon as I met you, I thought, who is this magical unicorn of a man? And I am also very proud and honored to call you my brother. And I hope that I will be able to come to Ghana and meet you face to face finally and continue to do some amazing work with you.
Ashe, 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 Marasi Papa. Thank you so much, my sister. And as always, at Setsi, we close by giving thanks once again to the original stewards of the various lands around. We give thanks to all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We give thanks to all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Thank you so much, Christine. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. And I will say also in Luganda, Webalenyo.
Asheo.